Each of these things is a separate government database collected by an independent ministry in its own format with its own attached 500-page PDF, which means to make any form of decision, whether you are a government minister or you're one of the 74 million MSMEs across India, you need to hire computer scientists and data scientists who are going to spend 6 years of schooling to rename column headers on a spreadsheet. This is a broken problem. And so that's where we decided to build Data Commons. The goal of Data Commons was to organize all the world's public statistical data and make it universally accessible and useful. And we did this in 3 ways. First, we built an open source platform with open APIs using open schemas. Secondly, we used that to construct a common knowledge graph. We want to get all this data into this common format backed by schema.org that's used by over 40 million websites out there. And thirdly, we used AI to make that data more accessible. We put a front-end natural language search interface that allowed you to quickly search and get the responses that you wanted. Again, our goal here is to avoid the tax that's often paid by folks trying to play with data. How can you make quicker those steps of downloading, cleaning, normalizing, and joining data? Instead, go straight to the question you want to ask in your own natural language. And so here is an example of someone being able to ask a quick question about literacy in India and quickly getting a set of graphs and charts. Now again, these graphs and charts don't suffer from the risk of hallucination because AI is being used to take your human language query and turn it into a database call, which means that the data that's pulled also has source information and provenance attached to it. We believe this is really required to ensure that you can trust the data and then use it in your own tool flow. So here, I want to talk a bit about some of the partners that we've worked with, one of the big ones being the United Nations. 2 years ago, we became the backend to the United Nations Stats Group, being able to launch with not only data from the Sustainable Development Goals, but also data from the World Health Organization, the International Labor Organization, and more. And the way we were able to do this is because of our open source stack. This allows you to take the Data Commons instance and run it in your own private servers. This allows you to create your own GCP instance with Data Commons where your private data can overlay with all the publicly available data, allowing for data itself to scale. Again, now LLMs are a key part of this, but large language models, as they're called, they're great with language, but they're not yet great with data. And we know that this is a problem. For example, right before I decided to search on AI mode for a question around commodity-wise export data for fruit products in India. And AI mode told me, without clear sourcing, that there are about 83,000 crore rupees of fruit exports in India. Some competitor LLMs told me that there are 9,500 crore rupee exports. Which number is real? Which one do I trust? Do I even know if the footnotes are real in that case? By the way, the actual answer is 1,44 crore, so neither was right in this case. But this is the problem we face right now with data and how it's being used. And so that's where we wanted to talk about a bit of solution spacing here. To prepare India for the AI revolution, AkeStep as an organization introduced the concept of the data boarding pass with the goal of breaking down silos and building trustworthy decision-making tools. Over the last 6 weeks, AkeStep, working closely with our team, has identified Data Commons as the ideal vehicle and has launched a prototype of what this service could look like. So let's talk about what it looks like today. India is awash in data. We're data rich, yet we're insight poor. If you're a government minister, one of India's 74 million MSMEs, which I mentioned earlier, or if you're a startup founder, you end up paying this huge tax of having to understand how you can use this data. And if you make a request, there's a big bottleneck there, which is the data analyst who works in government. And there's a finite number of those data analysts. And regardless of how good she may be, there's no way that she can meet the scale of all the questions being asked. And that's where we can, again, use this open format to try to get to a solution space here. So the question is, could we use this open Data Commons format to try to create a solution quickly for AkeStep? And so what we did is we spun up a private Data Commons using data from the Ministry of Statistics. And rather than focusing on data pipelines, now we can quickly ask questions in a natural language. We can quickly get those answers and almost get the tool itself to build us a policy brief on its own. You can actually play with this yourself if you go to databoardingpass.ai. So you can go to databoardingpass.ai and see more about this on your own. So let's look at ideally where we want to move towards. So now the bottleneck can be solved, right? Our minister, our entrepreneur, our startup founder, they all have a faster path to unlocking national scale with data. So a decade ago, India leaped over legacy banking with UPI. 2 decades ago, India leaped past landline telephones with mobile. So the question today is, are we going to be able to leap over the global AI divide? And the way we think we can do that is by building digital public intelligence in this ecosystem. So with that, I wanted to introduce and bring up our panel, our wonderful panel here. So I'm going to start introducing one person at a time as we bring chairs to the stage. And if I can ask them to please come up, and you can hold your applause till the end. For our panel, I'm hoping to have a lively discussion. I told our panelists in advance, disagreements are more fun than agreements on a panel, so hopefully we get to some truths through this. I want to start with Rohit Bharadwaj. Mr. Bharadwaj is the Deputy Director General of the Data Informatics and Innovation Division at NSO India. He brings over 26 years of leadership in official statistics, and he is a recognized leader at the intersection of data governance and digital innovation. And it would be bereft of me to not mention that he recently launched a MOSP MCP server, which is pretty impressive. So Mr. Bharadwaj, thank you for joining us. I would like to also bring up Ms. Aparajita Chowdhury. Aparajita Chowdhury is currently leading data and AI solutions at People Plus AI and Ekstep Foundation, and previously led data and analytics at Evasnet Yodlee. And she has been a wonderful partner to work with, I'd like to state, for the Data Boarding Pass pilot. I'd like to now invite Dr. Srinath Srinivasa. Dr. Srinath heads the Web Science Lab and is the Dean of R&D at the International Institute of Information Technology, IIITB, Bangalore. And finally, I would like to invite up Gaurav Godwani. Gaurav is co-founder and executive director of Civic Data Lab, a private research lab that enables millions of changemakers to strengthen data and AI for the public good ecosystem in India and other Asia-Pacific countries. So I invite you all to please take a seat. And while I get seated, I'm going to kick off with an opening speed round question. So again, the rules of a speed round are simple. The answers have to be short, pithy, and fast, and we're going to go from Gaurav down. So the first speed round question is, and since we're talking about AI, I wanted to ask how AI has affected all your jobs. What's the biggest way AI has changed your day-to-day personal or professional work?
I think it has started to help us find the data sets, find the kind of knowledge I've been looking for much faster. It has helped us draft emails better. I think all of us have been using that for that. And it has helped us find the right recommendations at the right time. So that has a biggest help for me.
Yeah, for me, AI has become almost pervasive, but not completely, both in my personal and professional life. And of course, drafting emails and issuing calls. And perhaps professionally, the biggest part of AI use is students use AI to write papers, and we use AI to check whether some paper is AI written. So that's probably the best.
Yes, so preparing answers for a panel like this. Okay, on a serious note, I guess I agree with my co-panelist when I say that I use for finding information and working more on policy, working more on my core area rather than looking for information. That's what I feel where the difference has been made.
So I believe the key difference that makes for me is the meeting minutes. Amount of time I save for multiple meetings and multiple conversations that we have, and even of taking notes by hand, something or other get missed. But that is one key professional and performance improvement that I appreciate AI for.
So let's do one other speed round question. So we talked about AI, let's talk about data. Today, what is your least favorite part about working with data?
Too much data, sometimes too much content, and even though everything is rich, it always gets into a decision fatigue, even starting from which movie to watch in Netflix versus Prime to kind of which document to read or which book to read. I think there are like way too much data, and that's where is the problem today.
Me? Not finding data about data? I don't find metadata, and when I find it, I had to wrestle with it. So that's the problem I see.
Yes, very similar. Finding data is one of the biggest challenges. And second biggest challenge is how do we kind of align different data sets together, because they're all coming from different places, collected at different times, at different granularity. So that's the biggest dreary work that we have to do with data.
I think two things. One, not able to find the right data at the right time. For example, if I want to look for losses and damages for a recent disaster happening in, say, northeastern region, not able to find what was the losses and damages happening on that particular incident. And second is, if I find that, what are the insights? Once I've found the data, what are the insights I can infer from that? That's the second challenge.
Thank you all for playing with us on that speed round. I wanted to actually throw the opening panel question over to you, Aparajita. You know, we see this massive gap in the market between this wealth of data available, this too much data, as you worded it, and the wealth of insights actually reaching non-technical users, right? And so why do most current tools still require this data science degree, even from the user experience perspective, right, on how you touch them and operate with them? And what do you think it'll take to get to the point where like a local village head or a local official can query complex data using just their own voice or natural language?
Thank you, Prem. So yeah, starting with the too much data, how do we kind of organize this data and make insight useful and actionable for us so that we are not, again, getting drowned in too many insights, which becomes another set of data, right? So your first question, why do we need data science experience? And that is what is happening even at the executive level. As leaders to make decisions, a lot of insights are being presented in dashboards and statistical graphs, right? So as your question, do we need that particular skill set? A lot of, even the doctors today are asking that I didn't like math in school, but now I have to learn statistics again to interpret this data. So one way is there's obviously a lot of progress has happened now. How we communicate from dashboard to a more interface-friendly, interactive AI and interfaces that is coming up. Then it comes to the second one, probably the leaders for making decisions, we have already solved the problem. We are able to speak in English, talk in English, and communicate and be getting AI better and better. Now the second point that Prem you raised, how did the village head actually uses it? That's the last mile connection of accessibility, that how do we think about their problem, that what kind of language and style of interaction will work for them. That is still the gap that I think India is trying to bridge the gap, and India is quite progressing well. But that's where our focus should be, that innovation is fine, but how do you take the innovation to impact is bridging that last mile gap.
So speaking of bridging that last mile, Gaurav, your entire career has been focused on the most vulnerable populations and how we can use data and technology to help them out. My question for you is, AI tools today are built largely on English corpuses. They require high bandwidth and are a high amount of token cost. And these tend to make them harder to access. So what can we do to ensure that these tools will work just as well for someone speaking a local language on the edge as they do for me sitting inside a large multinational company?
Right. So maybe I can follow your cue and do a quick poll. Has anyone queried any of the LLMs in last couple of weeks for English or Hindi? Raise your hand. I'm sure there would be more. Come on, don't be shy. Any other language apart from English or Hindi? Wow. Do you find the service was satisfactory for your family members as well? Someone elderly in your family who would like to use the same interface to query the language they want to work with. So that's the gap. That's the gap which we are trying to solve, right? With the project Bhashini, which is being implemented by Government of India, we are trying to collect a lot of local language data sets of certain languages. I speak Sindhi, for example, my mother tongue Sindhi, and I never got an opportunity to write Sindhi. So it's all vocal knowledge for me. But how do we make that work for AI models is much more critical because they are local dialects, their local voice information. Some of the languages we work with are only voice languages as well. All of these data sets, these archives, this information is not easily accessible, and that's the bridge we have to solve for. So we find civil society organizations, we work with community leaders who have been working with local communities, who understand some of the socioeconomic challenges around these languages to get those data sets digitized, get those digitized in a manner which is inclusive, not extractive in nature, and get them in a manner which are standardized as well, which can integrate with platforms like what we saw today. So that's the kind of work which we are facilitating with the help of Project Bhashini and Gates Foundation. And we are trying to create these champions, data champions, language champions, across the states in India who would be helping civil society organizations, local economic institutions, local startup communities to get these data sets digitized, standardized, and get it integrated at one place.
Thank you. That was great. Mr. Bharadwaj, question for you. As a government representative here, and I want to pivot a bit to talking about data itself now. We see thousands of organizations building their own dashboards, right? From scratch every year, you see these, as KPI boards, whatever they might be, you see them popping up all over the place. Is this duplication effort a feature or is it a failure?
Okay. Before that, can I take a second stab at what you asked her?
Of course.
Okay. So just one quick point which I wanted to make. Why do we need data scientists and why are we not able to handle data independently? That's the question perhaps was. The answer is that we value too much the scheme and too less the meaning. The world has changed. We have to start valuing the meaning and putting schema at the background. That's when we are going to talk about data and everybody else other than data scientists. And of course, that put my job in jeopardy, but still I'll take it. And that's what I feel that there lies the problem, that we are still giving value to schema too much. And then we need filters, we need right joins, we need left joins, SQL, I don't know what. So that we need to work. Somehow we need to work. On Gaurav's point, I just have to say one thing, and this is not my original quote, I'm quoting someone, that voice is the new UI. We have to ensure that in a country like India, the voice enables AI usage, AI literacy. So I don't completely agree with you when you say your granddad is not able to use AI. That's our job to make him AI literate. We are not able to make him AI literate, that's our failure. That's the failure of this generation. Not a problem of LLM, not a problem of his. So that's how I look at it. Sorry, I took some time on that. I thought I'll take a second stab on that. So far as my question goes, yes. If my livelihood is related to data, I would like my data to be at the forefront. I would like to create as much dashboards as possible, knowing very well that dashboards don't tell us any story. The KPIs are as useless as the data is. If the data is not good, KPIs will not tell you anything. But since my livelihood depends on that, I'll try to project my data as the data set and try to project a panacea for every solution which comes from my data sets. That's the problem. So the problem is that we have not been able to standardize the foundation of the data. So no amount of AI can compensate for a bad foundation. So what we have to do, we have to look at the foundational aspects of the data. We have to ensure, he just talked about ontologies, he talked about many good practices. I was just looking at it. We have to ensure that these are not only talked in this conference room, but they're adopted and modified and absorbed in real world scenario. And then I'm very sure that only one dashboard would be available. Since the data standards are different, so we have different dashboards.
By the way, if we can go backwards a step, because Gaurav, you asked this great audience poll question. So again, if you can raise your hand if you used AI today already. Raise your hand. All right. So I'm surprised not every hand was up, because any of you who unlocked a phone today with a fingerprint or a face sensor, who used Google Maps to get here today, you used AI. We just don't call it AI once it works for us seamlessly. And I think that's a concept that you're bringing here about how we get our grandparents to also be able to seamlessly use the technologies without having to think about the underlying complexity of that. There's a great quote about this, that the beauty of the iPhone is that it took layers of complexity and hid them all in a simple interface. There's also another quote about the perversity of the financial system I'll leave for later. So or Professor, I should say, Srinath, your research is on the value of the World Wide Web to humanity. And I want to talk with regards to data specifically. What are those benefits that Mr. Bharadwaj talked about earlier about investing in shared interoperable data foundations?
Yeah. So I have been working with or understanding the impact of the internet, World Wide Web, and now AI on human lives in different places. So we work with governments, both the central government and the state government. We have worked with companies, and we also work with civil society organizations who work on the grassroots. And so one thing what I found is the approach to data is very different across the board. How a community looks at data would be very different from how a government looks at data. But despite the apparent diversity around, I think there is also a fundamental issue. I think it's probably specific to India. It's about the trust issue with respect to the establishment. I think in India, not just in villages or whatever, even in institutions, there is a fundamental distrust with anything institutional. I'll give a quick example just to drive home the point. We have formal meetings where we discuss threadbare everything and come to a conclusion. And then there is a coffee table gossip saying that, the real reason this decision was reached was something else. And that is found more trustworthy than what the official missionary said. So there is a kind of this distrust between what the establishment says and what the community grapevine basically says. And so I think really what is needed here is the right kind of stewardship with data. So data is helpful in different ways. We have worked with different communities. Having the right data element, for example, we worked with some shepherd community in Karnataka and some farmers and so on. Getting access to the right data is very important, but really the main barrier here is the trust in the whole system. And having the right steward interface with people, I think can make the real AI diffusion possible in this. So that's my point.
So if I can ask a follow-up question on that, with this lack of trust of the establishment, is data a tool for democracy or not?
Yes, very much so. I think, let me put it this way. The thing is, the value of data is kind of recognized, but the trust with the data is not really there. And but with the right stewardship, data would get used and would actually benefit people. We've already seen a lot of applications, for example, DPI-based applications that use open data sets, and people use them, Namayatri and others, in places like Bangalore. So which are quite pervasive, and all segments of society kind of use them. But again, the uptake is still kind of slow. ONDC, for example, I think didn't have that much of an uptake. And so this is my theory on what's stopping the uptake, but then this is the...
So consider this an open question for the room. Mr. Bharadwaj, you were actually talking about data huggers outside. And so one of the things I want to understand a bit is what are the current incentives, sometimes perverse incentives, for government entities and others to keep systems siloed and fragmented?
So perhaps I'll say the government does not have any incentive to keep the data silo. It's just the foundation we need to build together. And as part of it, if you know NSO India, there's a whole digital bouquet. We have a national data portal, we have the website, we have apps, we have micro data portal, and to top it all, as he said, we have an MCP server. I request all of you to go to our website and use that. So that takes away the problem of schema altogether. You just go connect that tool and get the insight. And that itself is a huge data set. So what I'm trying to say that, but yes, having said that, there would be some people or some organization where they feel that that they need to keep their data to themselves. The problem is not systematic. The problem is personal. When people think that making data public may just lead to people finding a problem in their data set, and which will perhaps lead to their jobs getting affected. That's the problem I see combined. And if we are able, as a society, as a system, we are able to remove this fear from everyone who is creating data, that look, when data is created, there has to be some issues with it, and we need to work on it, to improve it, to clean it. If that happens over a period of time, I don't see any data hugger existing anymore.
Do you believe, sir, that there is a feedback loop between usage of data and budget or value to your ministry? And if not, should there be?
It is. If you ask me, it may not be a tangible number to give it to you, but if we start getting feedback or an adverse feedback on our data sets, it does affect everything, including the budget. So it's our job. But at the same time, I'll tell you that NSOs are most equipped, and I tell it with some responsibility, to produce data. NSOs are the only organizations who are supposed to produce data for the policy making. All other data produced by different organizations is a secondary activity. So administrative data is being produced as a secondary activity to the administration. So that's why NSOs has better quality criteria. The NSOs have better metadata available. So it's like NSOs have bigger responsibilities in this data ecosystem. I see NSO, NSO can remain binary in their nature, that I'll only be an active data producer. Now we'll have to be orchestrating the entire ecosystem of data. We have to ensure that good standards are followed. We have to ensure that when data is produced, the metadata is available to wrestle with, if at all. We also, lastly, when data is produced, metadata is available, they are linked. Most of the time what happens, there is no linking, the document gets lost in the bargain. So these are the few issues I feel, and yes, I'll say there is value attached to the data we produce, and there should be.
So again, as an open question for the group, you started on this point around trust. What is currently the biggest trust barrier for the usage of AI as you folks see it?
So, trust barrier is, I believe, it is very my personal perspective, right? When I'm getting a recommendation, I use it, it is useful for me, and first time I like it. Second time, when it goes to a hyper-personalization level, I start questioning, am I losing my autonomy, right? And that is when, as a user, the question comes, go back. How is this AI actually working? What is the data behind it? What is my personal data that actually I exposed myself to others? So a lot of these questions about data, trust, and why data are siloed and locked, somebody doesn't open it, somehow again comes down to that, what we have done in the foundation that Mr. Bharadwaj mentioned, to build trust by design, right? So I believe Aadhaar is so successful today, even though it is actually linked to our personal data, because how the system was designed, how a system was designed from the scratch so secure. I do not think, pardon me if I'm incorrect, but I do not think the US SSN system is that secure in the way of implementing authentication as Aadhaar is in India, right? So again, I want to take a reference to Mr. Bharadwaj's point that it is this generation's responsibility to make our previous generation AI use better for them. But also this generation also, as actually, we're being very hard on this generation because we got kind of bombarded with technology revolution, and data foundation was not there because it was not needed before, right? Everybody created their data for their use. I mean, I didn't need to think about what metadata I have to link to others because data was only for my use, for my organization, for my department. Today, we are facing that need, and today, I am very hopeful that dialogues are happening. We are talking about redefining the foundation, creating metadata so that we can link, and I believe this generation is doing a wonderful job that we are having those dialogues at the right time.
Yeah, can I add to that point? Yeah, I think very valid points. So one more perspective about trust is, see, I think in the recent years, for some reason, we have started using disruption in a positive connotation. But actually, disruption means disruption of livelihoods, disruption of identities, disruption of. So even when to connect with the previous question, why are data is silos, right? And so historically, data was generated in silos, and there have been some long entrenched practices that are there. For example, crop yield data, right, the practice goes back to the days of the great statistician Mahalanobis. So he created this something called crop cutting experiments, and that's the practice that's being used for more than 70 years now. And there's a huge infrastructure in place, and so it's very difficult for this big infrastructure to kind of change and say, okay, I'm going to make my data interoperable. And similarly, communities and so on, they fear that their identity gets lost in this bigger system and so on. So those are some barriers that kind of come through.
So feel free to use this as a speed round or as a lecture session towards me. As someone who works at a large multinational tech company, what advice would you all give me?
I can begin. So building on previous points, I think what large big tech firms can do at this point is facilitate participatory AI auditing of their platforms for several use cases specific to our geographies where we need these AI models to work. For example, you gave an example of agriculture. We are an agrarian economy. We need agriculture advice at a timely basis. Now today, if I use one of the big models and query that I have a mango farm, I'm a farmer from, say, a district in Maharashtra, I have a mango farm, how much urea I should put in it so that I have a good yield? The problem with existing models and the kind of data integration is it would give me an answer. I'm not sure that answer would be correct. And that's what we're trying to do with Parak AI, our platform to participatory AI auditing. And we realized that the Kisan call centers data says you have to add 200 gram per mango tree, while some of the models would claim, say, you need to add 800 gram urea. Now that's a major difference in terms of information sharing with the farmer. And farmer would say, okay, I trust it because I'm asking my mobile phone this information. I used to ask this previously from search engines, and I used to get decent information. So there are chances of hallucination, there are chances of biases, there are chances of local context missing, which we can mitigate preemptively by doing participatory AI auditing, where we involve a local expert who is from that geography, who knows that location really well, B, domain experts who are really familiar with that particular domain, in this case in agriculture. That would really incentivize adoption in the country.
Yeah, so I guess very quick note from my side is, the usual saying that familiarity breeds contempt, but I would say that familiarity also breeds trust. And so whether we convert the familiarity to contempt or trust, it's totally up to us. And so I think what multinationals can do is to work with the economy in a way that's familiar to them. So work with existing practices, work with existing mental models, and then enrich those mental models to a place where we can elevate them to the next level, where we can empower each community or each stakeholder to work better in their own way that they were doing. So that's probably it.
Okay. So I'll first just try to explain what makes me very uncomfortable with AI. Being statistician, it's the lack of explainability. My dream is that when a deep learning model will explain that how have they inferred. So I'm just looking forward to that future. I'm still not sure. And I'll again harp on the AI literacy. So AI literacy is again something which creates most of the distrust for the AI. People are not knowing that what it is doing, why it is doing, and that leads to less usage of AI. So I mean, a very quick note on that. Yes, so to you, I'll say don't work in silos. It's only not the government which works in silos. At times, multinational also works in silos. I'll request you to create a product which is replicable. You have a beautiful product over there, and I must congratulate you for that. But just don't create an over-specialized product which cannot be replicated in the real-world scenario. Work with the system, work with the government, work with the voluntary sector. Help us reach that stage. and help us work on those things. So give us a minimum value of a product which is available. Give us that so that everybody gets benefit of your, your competence, your resources, and then give us an aspirational thing, which not many can reach, but of course, there's always a step to take forward. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. I think the trust factor that Professor mentioned is pretty good because Google has a brand name and we all have the familiarity and the trust. Obviously, the suspicion comes in as because of the technology growth, are we responsible, are you ethical, interpretability, everything. But while you are doing it, you are already proving, I mean, in the way Google or the big companies also have the power to kind of lead the way, how to build more interpretable, more trustworthy AI solutions. The only thing I would say that while you do and prove it in different parts of the world, understanding the context of localization becomes important. So what works for, let's say, United Nations, exact same strategy probably is not working in India, but it has to be a little different. So for every country, if we kind of, with agility, adopt that localization context and what solution will work, I believe I think Google is already doing that, but that's what would be my advice to all multinationals and big techs.
So as panelists here, I think we're all fellow travelers when it comes to this data journey. And the question I have for you is, as we move forward, do you think it is plausible that we have this concept of open data as a public utility? Data that is both open and transparent enough to both governments and citizens that we can actually trust it and use it together to have a shared decision space, versus at times what I feel we have now, which is the loudest member in the room wins, right? So do we believe, is that a naive view of mine, or is this a realistic view of a future we can build?
I would say yes. I think this is the time. Earlier it was probably not, as we were saying that data was collected for individual purpose. That's why silos existed. So, but now this is the time that there is a real utility that we combine and have more powerful decisions and more actionable insights for the population.
And if I can just ask one follow-up for each of you along with this, which is, what is one thing your organization wants to do in the next year to try to move that vision forward?
So my organization, X-Step Foundation, is pretty firm believer in this. So we are working with all of you actually together to build that, make this vision come to life. So I would request you all to actually visit the booth in the X-Step Pavilion also if you have time. So we are, as Prem already mentioned, we are coming up with a conceptual framework of data boarding pass. But the idea is that how we can break silos, standardize, clean, and create an AI-ready database for overall population scale impact of AI.
Okay. So next year, maybe in another 6 months, the idea is to create a data as a service AI stack where people can just use natural language to get insights from the data. It will work on a different layer. I cannot divulge all the details right now, but it's in the making. But website, you go there, you have an AI chatbot to get the information. You have MCP server to get the information from our national data portal. You have another AI tool which you can use for our micro data portal. By the way, each of the survey of the micro data portal has more than 1 million records. So you can just do it and how quickly you can do it. And lastly, but I think most importantly, there is a system for user to access it. It's not unknown. It's available, not only available, it's accessible, it's known. So that's our, short-term goal, I'll say, in next 6 months.
So from IIITB as a university, our main objective is to empower the ecosystem. One, of course, by providing trained personnel who are conversant with the open data ecosystem. Second, through active research. So my own group has conducted multiple research theses have come out in this. One, we have conducted some research on some kind of formalisms or data models for how to integrate data in a purpose agnostic manner, because data can be used for any purposes. So we came out with a formalism called multiverse, and there's a PhD thesis on that. We also came out with some models on how to introduce AI with complex systems, and we call it intervention science. That is, how do we use data to design policy interventions to nudge towards certain outcomes? And we also have a PhD thesis plus a couple of master's theses on this. And so these are some of our initiatives.
Quickly, so at Civic Data Lab, as people might have aware, we are traditionally an open data organization. So we truly believe that if you have to make AI work for public good, we need to make sure data works for public good, and that cannot happen if we don't have good open government data. So we are committed to build capacity of all the chief data officers in the country and other countries as well to make sure their data is standardized, near real time, is AI ready, and ensure that that supply side of the problem we solve in next couple of months, not years. Second one is to enable new change makers, upcoming change makers, to consume these data sets and meaningfully engage with government, meaningfully engage with other change makers who are working on AI for public good. And that open data becomes the foundational layer towards it, and we would try to push for it as much as possible in upcoming years.
As we close this session, I'd like to actually close on a question for all of you. Many of you may try to add us on LinkedIn. I'm going to say that if you want to successfully do that, please try to answer the question as you try to add us, which is, if I gave you a magic wand, let's say we're in the future, we've all achieved our goal, right? We've created this massive interoperable system with all of India's data in it, with that voice interface that even my grandmother can use. What is the one question you want to ask that interface? So what is the one question you want to ask that interface?
I can start. What do I need to fix in my neighborhood? What are the major problems my neighborhood is facing, and how can I fix it? That would be my first question.
Maybe I can go next. I have two questions to ask this. As a country, what is driving us and what is stopping us in these diverse countries?
So we are plumbers, no? We have to plumb. So my question would be, what are the data sets you need, or what improvement can I bring in this data set environment which will help you give us more accurate answers to people like them?
Okay. It's a magic wand, so the interface already exists. So I would ask a question that, since we have done this to enable population, can you tell me how secure my population is by using you?
I love it. I hope this has been an inspiring session for all of you. Thank you all for coming today. And I want to thank my panel here for a very lively discussion. Again, for those of you interested, where should people go? You want to let them know the website?
So there is a new website launched, databoardingpass.ai. Please go visit. It's a very preliminary website, but you'll get information about it.
Thank you all.